Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and I just got back from the new film Saving Mr. Banks. P.L. Travers' trip to Los Angeles as Walt Disney tries to convince her to give up the rights to Mary Poppins so that he can make a movie about it. The thing about Walt Disney Studios and the relationship with the image of Walt Disney has never been something I've liked. They make a myth out of the man. They kind of make him into like a Christ-like figure. They don't make him into the complicated person that he really was. I mean, he was really one of the most interesting people of the 20th century, and he really built quite an amazing studio, and he was a pretty interesting guy. But I don't think Walt Disney Studios doesn't seem to really want to go into that. They really like to keep it as like a happy, nice figure who is imaginative. He didn't smoke. Let's not tell the kids about that. Let's just keep it very nice and safe and family friendly. And I understand that because that's what Disney does. They make family entertainment. That's what they've been known for a very long time. Bob Iger, who's the CEO of Disney currently, actually referred to this film as a brand deposit, which is a term Steve Jobs came up with, which is a way for consumers to view your brand or your company better. This is almost a tax write-off of a movie. I definitely understand that film can't really be like real life and you have to change certain things. But they somehow made a film that both P.L. Travers probably would have disliked and I think Walt Disney would have disliked as well. It's really kind of a very disingenuous film. It's a kind of film like this idea in the 90s where they kind of tried to make these films that look like 40s and 50s films and have all this overscoring and tried to act like a Hollywood film from the past and pretend the 70s never happened. Some of them are very enjoyable. In fact, I think Blue Jasmine does that actually quite well in this kind of falsehood of a Hollywood film. It's kind of like the worst sense of postmodernism, where it's very aware it's being a Hollywood film, but in a way that the Hollywood films of the 40s and the 50s wouldn't have made it, with all the aw shucksness and its simplicity. They found a way to kind of make a very corporate version of the past studio era. Baby boomers have been really into that. They made quite a bunch of them, and with the overscoring punctuating everything so you don't have to think too hard about it at all. And Saving Mr. Banks is an alright version of that, but I think the slimy reasons they made it are very creepy. It feels more corporate than I think I've seen from any film this year. The fact that they're made it because it would have been a brand deposit. Why a film was made doesn't matter as much as the film itself. And I think Saving Mr. Banks is just HBO original movie kind of game change quality film. They're there so people can be like, and this really happened. Did you know about this? You're not really doing anything creative with this idea. You've changed P.L. Travers so she's a little more likable, although I can't imagine how she could have been worse than she was in this film. She must have been a really horrible person. Walt Disney is such an interesting character. Out of all the stories you could tell about Walt Disney's life, you know, whether it be a biopic, which they tried before and weren't successful in making, or just, you know, the story of him and Ub Iwerks or something like that. But this is like kind of an odd story to make a film about. And the 50th anniversary of Mary Poppins, and it's weird to make a movie about how another movie is really good. After this, I wanted to see Mary Poppins, but I'm not sure, like, is it because I heard all those songs and those songs are really good and, you know, I'm remembering how amazing Mary Poppins is, or is it because the advertising worked? And this film reeks of advertising. It's advertising Mary Poppins. It's advertising the Disney brand. Really, film in itself sometimes is advertising. Iron Man is advertising for toys, but this film feels completely corporate and heartless in what it's trying to do. It's trying to kind of manipulate the image of these two people. Now, they wouldn't let Disney smoke, and that's been a thing a lot of people have talked about, but I think the thing with that is that Disney actually kept that quite a big secret. So in a lot of the scenes you probably would not have seen him smoke. It's not that big of a deal. And it's directed by one of the worst Hollywood, kind of corporate Hollywood filmmakers, John Lee Hancock, who also directed The Blind Side, which is a film I kind of gleefully hate. In fact, I really hated it at first and then like keep watching it and hating it more and loving to pick it apart. This is way better structured than The Blind Side. His past two films have had such an icky and evil sense of morals behind them that I really don't ever want to meet that guy, because he seems like probably one of the worst people ever. His past two films are taking biographical information and completely shifting it to make an enjoyable Hollywood film. He changes the story of Michael Oher and makes it a Lifetime movie, or he changes this and makes it a weird corporate version of a 40s, 50s Hollywood film. Disney's an interesting company because there's things like Frozen, and when I see Frozen, I'm walking out of that film and I'm loving Let It Go. That song's amazing, and I love that movie, and I love Pixar and Marvel Studios, and they definitely challenge themselves quite a bit for a company that has so much money. It's interesting what they do sometimes. And then they make some of the worst crap that the Hollywood corporate machine can ever dream up. Between this and The Lone Ranger, this is a creepy corporate movie. There is not a creepier corporate movie, and the worst part is it just comes off as a film that should have played on HBO. You know what? I just would like the movie gods to change reality, and I wish Beyond the Candelabra had been able to come out in theaters and I could see that on the big screen, and Saving Mr. Banks can be on Disney Channel at like 8 o'clock on a Saturday, and I could have completely ignored this. I don't particularly like the acting. I like Emma Thompson. I like Tom Hanks. I kind of like Paul Giamatti and Jason Schwartzman, who actually, his half-brother shot this film, which is an interesting little tidbit. It's a good film to fall asleep to. It's so literal. It's so easy to understand. It just tucks you in bed at night and goes, oh, it's okay. This is how they got Mary Poppins, and everything was all right. And this is the reason someone does this. You have therapists and psychoanalysts, and then you have films like this where it's like, oh, this means this, and this is why that is, and it's not very complicated. It's for someone who's very literal. And I think literal people can sometimes make good art, but this is an example of literal people making the worst fucking shit ever. It's not that bad of a movie, but everything it represents just, it's an alright movie with an evil soul. So if you have seen Saving Mr. Banks and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.